and thank everybody for joining, especially thanks to our panelists, our experts, and across the board, I'll list them quickly: Phoenix Fryman, Margaret Hill, Peg Hill, Jonathan Orlemans, Michelle Lorimer, Michael Karp, Don Powell, and Jim Hill. And I also want to especially thank second year MA student, Colton Stone, whose idea this was to put this program together, an excellent idea. We've done panels that are sort of adjacent to this one. In the past, we've done our future history teachers information panels, and this has come up. This subject of substitute teaching has come up, but I like the idea of doing a few focused panels on various topics. And this one today is going to be about substitute teaching, getting this work as substitute teaching. Last week, we talked about teaching at community colleges, which is again something that we've touched on before. Jim and Michael and Michelle joined us. And this week, I want to focus on substitute teaching. I want to go down the line and ask everybody just to, you can briefly introduce yourself. You can say a few words if you'd like, or just a quick hello. Again, feel free to take the floor. We'll go through one by one. I'll ask you in the order that I have you on my screen. So no, this is completely arbitrary, determined by the Zoom algorithm here. So Phoenix, I'll ask you to say hello first, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Phoenix Fryman. I am a elementary substitute in Riverside County. I just started subbing this school year in September, so I'm fairly new to the game, but it's been awesome. I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say. Thanks,
Phoenix. Oh, and I'll ask everybody, unless you're in a very quiet spot, and I don't see any issues with this so far, to when you're not speaking to make sure you mute. I've got a little bit of a sort of a free-for-all Zoom situation going on, and hopefully that will be sustainable. And we won't go down in flames here, but thanks everybody. And then we'll move on next to Margaret Hill, to Peg Hill. Could you please introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you. Jeremy, I think it's a great idea for a way to introduce teachers and others, teacher prep students to the possibilities here. I worked in a classroom for 18 years, and so I've met a lot of substitute teachers in that process, and some do very, very well and some struggle. So I hope in our discussion we'll be able to talk about some of the issues that lead to the struggle, and ways that teachers who are coming as new substitutes will try to gain from that and share with each other as well.
Thank you, Peg. And we'll move on next to and I didn't put together bios for everybody, but they would have been extensive with our brain trust here. But Peg has lots of experience in the administrative level, but also at the state, the curriculum level, all different materials. So I'm really excited to have this crew together. Jonathan was a late addition to the crew, asked me about a related matter, and I said, hop in. So Jonathan, please introduce yourself.
I'm Jonathan Orlemans. I've been substituting for about going on 3 years now. I'm in 3 different districts, all ages, elementary to high school. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Jonathan. And next on my screen, Michelle Lorimer. Michelle, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, nice to be here. I've never subbed, but I work with a lot of our students who are training to be history teachers. So I'm happy to just, be here, collect information, and then provide it out to those people who weren't able to attend. And then also just share any insights that you might need. I know that there are just huge substitute shortages right now. So it's great that you all get this experience to be able to hear what you need to do to get in and get working.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Colton, my co-organizer of the event, do you want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm really excited for all of you to be here and for our panelists to be here. Later in the discussion, I will post an article that I just recently found out. Some of the tests are being waived right now for substitute teaching, such as the CBEST, and it'll have the requirements for substitute teaching on there. I will post the article in the chat.
That's great. Thank you. And on that note, Colton, I will monitor the chat and pull down any good information and good links that are shared there so that I can put them in the description of the YouTube video that we post, but also in my email around to the department so that we develop a kind of cumulative batch of resources, which is something we've been doing with the future history teachers. And hopefully that we can get a kind of library of nice websites for people to draw on. Thank you. Excellent, Colton. Thanks for that. Michael Karp, please hop in.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Like others have said, I'm really excited about this workshop, and it's great we've got such a good group together. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an assistant professor at the Palm Desert campus in the history department. I was a substitute teacher for a little over 2.5 years in a couple different school districts while I was working on my dissertation, and then actually for a little bit again after graduate school. So have some experience with that. Kind of did everything from 4th grade to seniors, and learned a lot, which is why I'm excited to I learned a lot about classroom management and education, and ended up getting involved in K-12 teaching after that. So it can be a great gig and can help you learn a lot and open doors. So I'm excited to have us all here today.
Thank you, Michael. And next to Don Powell. Don, nice to meet you virtually, and please hop in.
Hi, Jeremy. Nice to meet everybody. My name's Don Powell. I prior to this year, I had no substitute teacher experience. So I moved from a bachelor's degree, got an internship credential, and was straight into the classroom. So I did about 10 years of teaching, moved into administrative work, then moved to the county office to do county office work. And because of the pandemic, got called to substitute teach for the first time ever. So I'm coming at this from a little bit different perspective, having actually gone the back door, I guess you could say, to there, and have a unique perspective. And so I'm excited to share and hang out.
That's great. Thank you, Don. And I love the sort of building of all these different parts, sort of triangulating this world for everybody. Next I've got is Jim Hill. Please, Jim, hop in.
Hi, everybody. Echoing what some others have said, number one, this is a great time to be looking for substitute work. Districts all over the place are desperate. Los Angeles, for example, which is a little out of your driving area, is posting that they have no substitutes. I mean, they are using everybody. And as Don referenced, a lot of the county office people are out subbing. Everybody is desperate for subs. Yes, a lot of the rules have just been modified down. Many of the requirements are temporarily on hold or waived. So you really need to check that out. I would add a couple of things. One is that if you get a substitute position, which should not be very hard right now, remember that is a great way to get known in a school and a school district, and people see you and they get acquainted with you. And if you do get to sub, make sure you eat lunch in the lunchroom with many of the colleagues of the department you want to get into. So you need to reach out and in that situation and get known. Secondly, having been an administrator for a while and worked with people who were in the position of subbing, realized ahead of time that some teachers will not be leaving detailed or sometimes even any lesson plans for you. Ideally, they would, but that doesn't always work. So it's a good thing to have a bit of a repertoire that you might call, what do I do in case of an emergency when I don't have any lesson plans and the kids I'm staring at or staring back at me. I have to have something to be able to do. So that will vary with your background and what your sub-assignment is. But the bottom line here is that districts are hungry, and it's a great way for you, especially if you are hungry, to maybe slow down your program a little bit and get a lot of work opportunities and make some money at the same time. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. That's an excellent start, and reminds me to sometimes remind my students to continue to be their resourceful selves. That when you graduate or when you take on this work, to continue to be your excellent resourceful selves and bring all of yourself to this work. And Don says what Jim's saying is so true. And then of course there's the exact opposite, where you come into a room and the teacher has assigned kids to handle everything, right? So I guess there's a sort of spectrum of encounters that you can expect. I see a lot of familiar faces here. Also nice to see Christina Yamanaka-Vua. Christina, I don't want to put you on the spot, but please do feel free to hop in and say hello if you'd like to. I welcome to everybody, and Christina joined us last week from Mount San Jacinto. So Christina, if you want to hop in and say hello, please go ahead.
Hi, I am a department co-chair of history at Mount San Jacinto College. And I'm here today just as a learner. I think that we have a lot of students in our classes who are interested in becoming history instructors, K through 12, but also at the upper level. And a number of my colleagues also substitute who are part-time faculty members. So I think this is just going to be great information, like Michelle said, to be able to share out as I learn.
Thank you, Christina. And I also am here really as an observer and someone who really wants to learn more here. My connection is a little bit spotty, so if I drop off, I am a non-essential participant here, and I hope the group continues. And Colton will be your brave leader, keeping us going, because I've deputized him as a co-host. So hopefully the meeting stays open if I drop off, and I'll try to jump back on, but my connection's been a little spotty. So I want to welcome the group to share on any number of themes. One theme that comes up, like with the future history teachers, is what I wish I'd known. And we have a combination of undergrad. We have a mix of undergrad students and also MA students who are in the first or second year of the MA program here today, and a couple on our panel of experts, but also a couple just joining to listen in. So I want to welcome anyone to hop in on this question or to direct the conversation in a different way. What I wish I'd known. People can either, we have a small enough group of panelists to go ahead and hop right in. And also to our attendees, please feel free to raise your hand or to go ahead and type something in the chat. Everybody should have access to the chat. Everybody should feel free to raise their hands. For our panelists, please go ahead and just unmute and jump in. But for our attendees, please, if you want to ask a question live, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll go through.
Sorry. I think the first thing that I would say is, even if you know that you want to be a history teacher at the high school level or at the middle school level or wherever you think you want to be, I would definitely take a crack at every single grade level that you can, mostly because what I've experienced is that as you get higher in the grade level, the amount of actual type teaching you're going to be doing as a substitute decreases. So like at the 12th grade level, you are doing next to nothing in terms of like what an actual teacher would be doing. And at the kinder level, especially a kinder dual language immersion class, which was the very first elementary experience I ever had, walked in halfway through the class period because I got the assignment late. So I showed up late, and the first thing they had to do was read a story in Spanish. My last name is Powell. Mi español es muy mal. And that's about the only thing I know how to say in Spanish. And so it was a huge shift in terms of the work that you would have to do. So you get more learning about like what actual teaching is at the elementary level, I would say. At least that's been my experience. And then at the secondary level, you know, it's going to vary tremendously. What I, as a teacher, I started off having subs do small things. And then I got to the point where like, sometimes you get, I'll just say it frankly, like inept subs. And then you're like, all right, how do I idiot proof this so that like, they don't have to do anything? You know, they weren't able to work the DVD player one time. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll teach kids each period how to work that. And then they don't have to do anything. The sub just shows up. And even if they don't show up, it's all set to go. So, but if you go through and you experience all those different grade levels, you'll discover things that you never knew about yourself. Like that, you know, teaching TK is like herding kittens, and that teaching high school, honestly, sometimes isn't much different. So.
Yeah, I'll jump in for a sec. All great points all around, Don, and reflected a lot of my experience as a sub as well. When I first started out, I was kind of thought like I was only going to do high school. But then, you know, over time, started doing middle school as well. And then, you know, even did elementary school a couple times, and quickly found out that like elementary school wasn't for me, in large part because it just felt like a lot of responsibility with like all these little people around. But it was a great experience, and I would definitely agree as well that, you know, the fourth grade sub plans were so much more detailed, and I did a whole lot more teaching. And at that point, especially when the first time I think I did fourth grade, I had basically just been doing only high school. So when I showed up, and it was like, whoa, like I'm actually going to be a teacher today. And it was actually really good and kind of a crash course, and you know, learned a lot from that. And then one thing I was kind of surprised by, you know, was I like one of the last places I ever thought I would find myself in my entire life was a middle school classroom. You know, it was like after I got out of 8th grade, it was like, I will never go back ever. And was really pleasantly surprised, actually. You know, like there was a lot of things I enjoyed about middle schoolers. Once I started subbing and I started doing it more regularly. To make a long story short, I actually ended up being a middle school humanities teacher full-time for a couple of years on down the road. But the subbing experience helped me know that that was, you know, a setting that actually was something that was interesting to me. And I wanted to go back to another point Don made, and I think related to one of the things that Peg said too about, you know, what kind of separates subs that are successful, you know, maybe from ones that struggle. One of the things to like know if you go into substitute teaching is any given day, you have no idea what you're going to get. And that goes for the lesson plans that are left behind. It goes, and then like from period to period, every single class is a totally different dynamic. So you could have like be teaching, you know, filling in for a teacher, and the first 2 periods go great, and period 3 might be the problem group, right? So you kind of, it's a job where you get a lot of learning really fast because it's really hands-on, but you also have to kind of, if you're interested in subbing, go in knowing the fact that every day is kind of its own new adventure, which is one of the great things about it, but it's one of the hard things. So to go back to a couple of those comments, like when I first started out, I was a history major. And so I was, you know, always excited anytime I got to do a history class. And it was only like, I don't know, maybe the 4th or 5th time I subbed, I got my first history class. It was a 10th grade world history class. I was really excited. And I was thinking, this is awesome. I get to go and fill in for a history teacher the whole day. And I still remember the classroom. You know, most classrooms have lots of stuff on the wall related to the class, but then also things for the students to look at. You know, it's good. It's a great thing to have a nicely decorated classroom. And I walked in, and the only thing on the wall was a movie poster for the movie 300. I was like, okay, that's different. And then there were subplans, but literally the subplans were just to have the students, you know, outline chapter 7 of the textbook, which none of them did. I was basically kind of refusal across the board. So anyway, it was, and the day was horrible because I had no backup plan. I thought, I'm a history major, this is going to be easy. You know, I thought I was going to go on no worries, and it ended up being this really long, difficult day. So having a plan B is good. talking to, faculty mentors, or if you've got other undergraduates that you're working with. And like, it's great to see a lot of people from History 3010 here talking to students that you're working with about backup lesson plans, looking stuff online, talking to other teachers. To have plan Bs is really important. And then the other thing too that took me a while to pick up on that Dr. Murray asked about, things you wish you would have known, some classroom management stuff that I didn't know. Like, it's great to greet kids at the door, hold the door open, say hi to them as they're coming into the room, make eye contact with them, that you're going to be somebody who's active in the classroom. And with that, you have to be active in the classroom, using proximity, moving around, checking in with students constantly. One of the very first mistakes I made, and again, this was like early on, is to just like sit up at the front of the classroom behind the podium and watch everything devolve into chaos, because I wasn't actually involved with the students. So those are definitely just a few of the things that would, like, if I had known kind of on day one going in, would have helped out with some of that kind of early trial and error.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, Jonathan, go ahead.
Definitely agreeing. You want to be walking around constantly. Like, the biggest mistake I think you can make is expecting everything to go as planned behind a podium or sitting down, because for whatever reason, no matter the grade level, no matter the age, kids are very susceptible to getting up out of their chairs as soon as you sit down. And so whatever reason the proximity thing is of the utmost importance, being able to check around and being able to check on students at their desk, making sure they're on track. Immediately from talking to a friend, as soon as you stand up next to a student, they're already back down into their work. And the other thing I would say is, definitely like getting to know your neighbor teachers. When you go into a room, they can hear your noise level in the classroom. They know what's going on. I've been in districts where there's been like pretty bad situations with students, and teachers will regularly check up on you. If they hear a classroom getting out of hand, it's really good to know your neighboring teachers. And so that helps you a lot. And improvising, being able to improvise, have a lesson plan, because you may not have one from a teacher. One might not be left for you. So having a lesson plan, already printed out worksheets, knowing the subject that you're going to go teach. And generally speaking, so I'm a history major also. Like second week of substituting, I got into an 8th grade class and there was no lesson plan left. And so what I was able to do was ask the students where in the book you were, what are you working on? They were doing, it was US history. So it was, I believe they were just barely starting to talk about the Revolutionary War. But since no lesson plan was left, I was able to at least gleam over the book, get an adjustment about what they were doing, and then kind of create a on-the-spot lesson plan with questions and prompts, get them working on at least like a 2-paragraph prompt. It took them the entire class to be done. But if there is a lesson plan left for you, especially with the higher grades, that day goes by quick. Periods are in 50 minutes, they're out, you don't have to worry about them. It's usually handing them some kind of form, they're filling it out, the assignment's done. And then as soon as you go into K through 6, that's when you're doing actual teaching. That's where your time management and restrictions with time management have to be a lot more. You have to start thinking about, are we getting done with math on time? Are we getting to PE on time? Are we getting onto, everything that the teacher expects you to have done that day? You have to really be paying attention to the clock, and you really have to kind of like dial in your time management, especially with elementary school.
Thanks, Jonathan. And we got a question from Chris McGuire, and also a couple comments in the chat, although they've also been addressed in the chat. So if you want to follow along, we can do that. But to the notes in the chat, we're getting at the sort of mechanics and logistics of it, and I would like to cover that just a little bit as well. Sort of how you apply for, how you get substitute work. So just sort of backtracking a little bit, if anybody wants to jump in on those sort of mechanics. These are really great insights from Michael, from Don, Jonathan, Jim, everybody. But Michael, or Chris, sorry, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask, from any of your guys' experience, would you say you are you were given lesson plans more often in a elementary environment as opposed to high school, or do you think it's about 50-50, or would you say it's about the same? I don't know, that's what I'm asking. Because it seems with how you're saying with time management, it would seem that the elementary school teacher obviously knows how they want to conduct their schedule. And it seems that they would have a better regiment in place rather than the, upper grades where, as you said, you just have a form for the most part. That's how it usually is in middle school and high school. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on it.
I'll for elementary, for the most part, I've always gotten subplans, and oftentimes, let's say it's a third grade, all the third grade teachers share, or oftentimes third grade teachers will share subplans. So if there's 3 third grade teachers, they all kind of work together and have the same subplans. So most oftentimes, one of the other teachers from the grade will either email or come into the class and provide the subplans.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody can jump in here. I also have, I asked a second-year MA student who is currently a teacher at Rialto High School, Hannah Knight, if she could join us, and she can't because she's teaching. But she did send me, if any of you know Hannah, she did send extensive notes. So whatever gets covered in the conversation, I will leave out. But for the rest, I also will share her notes because they include things like EdJoin, which is in answer to Diana's question, I think. Don and Alexander noted EdJoin there. And Jim said, when you're hired by a district, you can usually set the days of the week you'll be available. Given a time frame, expect a phone call in those mornings. When called, you're usually able to accept or not the assignment. You won't want to turn down assignments very often, said Jim. And to Diana, Don said, this is of course tongue-in-cheek, but have a pulse, show up, right? You can also simply go to HR departments and districts and ask to apply there. Often you will get an interview right then, especially in today's climate of high need, said Jim. And then Colton shared the link to the article, which is related to, and Jim noted these as, I think, temporary waivers to certain requirements for substitutes, and that includes CBEST. And Colton, thanks also for sharing your phone and email address. Are there any other comments in the chat that I should highlight, or does anybody else want to? So that EdJoin, which Don shared the link to, seems to me, and I'm now asking, I'm not telling anybody anything, asking, is EdJoin sort of the place to start this process? Getting letters of recommendation, making sure examinations and records and transcripts are where they need to be, following guidance that you would get from Don's shared EdJoin site. I know I'm taking things back a little bit, but we're at the bottom of the hour, so I just want to sort of flag that, walking back a little. In terms of the mechanics of that process, EdJoin seems to be the place to start, and going there, creating an account, getting your materials on there, your availabilities on there. Are there other things that in terms of the really fundamentals of this process that our students are going to need to know?
So,
yeah.
Oh, so EdJoin, as far as I know, is the only place to go if you're trying to do public school. I have yet to apply for a job not on EdJoin that was public in any way, shape, or form, from at the site to the county. And I would also say that, you know, I wanted to elaborate on my have a pulse bit, mostly because right now, yeah, you need to have a pulse, but as an administrator and as a district office personnel, typically what happens is you set up the parameters for what it is that you want in terms of job and job candidates. They don't interview, so they're going to set up interviews once you hit 10 candidates or once you hit 20 candidates or whatever it is that they've gotten. And so it may be months before you hear from them. It may be a week before you hear from them. And that's kind of what's going on in the back door. They're waiting to have enough people so that they can actually interview and have people show up to those interviews and get you processed and going through. So that's kind of what's happening on that. So if you don't hear from somebody right away, that might be why, especially knowing that the climate is so desperate right now. But you can always call. I think Jim had suggested to go in and actually talk to them, because if they've got somebody who can hire you on the spot and there's need, and trust me, there's need, they will. It's really expensive to have us go out and substitute teach, but that's how desperate they are. I mean, they have superintendents of school districts going in and substitute teaching classrooms and stuff of that nature. So I think I covered what I wanted to say, and I think I hit on what you were asking about.
Yeah, I think it seems that EdJoin is the place where a lot of this stuff gets underway. And I want to flag, if it's okay for just a second, a couple notes from Hannah. She said, set up your EdJoin account. The site, according to her, is used by many, if not all districts. The normal documentation, including recommendation letters. So you should be aware of how and when you ask for those letters. And this is as someone who is sometimes asked for these letters. You should, in your initial query, keep it quick to your faculty or someone if you're going to ask for letter recommendation, but also let them know the form the letter should take. Do you want that in your file? As, for example, a PDF? Obviously, faculty are not going to want to send you a Word document letter recommendation. But they can send you a PDF document that you can then keep in an email folder, keep track of it so that you can use it multiple times. Let them know if you'd like it addressed directly to a district or to whom it may concern. And maybe when you ask for those letters, I'd recommend everybody say, if you're asking a faculty member, realize that we're often busy and working with lots and lots of students. So say, hey, as Jonathan did for me the other day, say, hey, I'm Jonathan, I took this class. Maybe say, hey, I got an A in it. I wrote a paper about Song Dynasty burial practices, and that'll jog my memory. And I'll say, okay, I remember. Yeah, excellent student. Okay, and I've got a little bit of details. If you wrote something or edited for the journal or anything else that you'd like us to highlight in those letters, the more details you give us, the better. Don't feel presumptuous about giving us details with a very strong suggestion that we include that material in our letters. That's not presumptuous. That's very helpful. For us when we write those letters. So go ahead and give us a little bit of detail that you'd like to see included in those letters of recommendation, and that'll give us a pretty quick turnaround. Obviously, you don't really, unless you know the faculty member very well, you don't want to ask for an extremely quick turnaround. So please plan ahead so that you can get those letters of recommendation in. Find out whether, I think from my experience, I have not been asked by EdJoin to upload letters. Rather, in my experience, I have been sending PDF letters to applicants, which is a little different from for example, your typical grad school application, which you just go on and you enter my email address and I get an automated email. So EdJoin is a little different, I think, in the sense that it asks applicants to collect those letters. So you should go ahead and let your faculty know, hey, can you send me in PDF form this letter? I assume they don't need, I assume they don't want Word documents, again, because that's problematic in terms of security. Sending out anything with your signature on it, that's a Word document. But Michelle, please hop in.
Well, I just wanted to add that I've been called by districts as a reference for students. So it really helps if you, when you ask for a letter of reference, that you also like provide the bio to your professors, because when I received that call, it was just in the middle of the day randomly. And so it was kind of hard to answer some of those questions when I'm in the middle of something else. So if you can provide that ahead of time, then it really helps us answer questions when we get a call from a district looking to hire somebody.
Yeah, sharing that information in your initial communication is a good idea. Keeping it brief, sometimes even sort of bullet points, and here's what you need to know. Christine Clark said she's been substitute teaching for 2 districts next to each other for almost a year. And Christine, please feel free to weigh in, because it sounds really very valuable for the group. Been long-term sub for 2nd grade class since October. I love it. My major is single subject history. But could I take the CBEST in a multi-subject and teach in elementary permanently? That's a very good question. In terms, and this may be something that Michelle or Don or others have insights about. Do you need to be a liberal studies major, or can you be a history major who's taken the multi-subject CBEST?
The CBEST is a different test. You need the CSET, the subject. CSET. Yeah, and it would be the multi-subject, as Don mentioned in his note. Okay, and so and the CBEST is a separate exam, right? The CSET for multi-subject is what Christine would want to take. The multi-subject CSET is going to qualify you to teach K through 7, I believe, right? Like K6, K5. K6. Yeah.
K8. Okay. K8, depending upon how they structure it, and certain districts will want you to have a single subject. Other districts will prefer you to have a multiple subject. So it really, that 6, 7, 8 span gets real wonky depending upon who is the leadership at that site or district level in terms of what they want.
And then to just mention Christine's follow-up question, the CSET waiver that we typically talk about in the history department is only for social science CSET. So it does not count for the multi-subject. It doesn't count for math. It's the CSET waiver, which is just an equivalency, is specific to the department and to the CSET exam that you're trying to get equivalency for. So ours is just social science. You'd have to be like liberal studies or something major to be able to qualify for theirs, or math or whatever. You'd have to take those courses to qualify for that CSET waiver.
And I think that is possibly available, if I'm not mistaken, over in the College of Education or via the College of Education, that they may have also done a waiver. But again, yes, as Michelle says, that is based on having a transcript that has all these courses that slot into the equivalency that Michelle's talking about. And that's different from a history major.
And I would
go ahead, Don.
And I would certainly look into that, Christine, because honestly, on the liberal studies side of things, they would probably have included a lot of the different courses that you'll fall under as a BA student trying to get a history degree. So I'm not saying you'll have met them all, but there is a good possibility you may have met a chunk of them without even realizing it. So you definitely want to look into that. And then if you enjoy it, you should by all means pursue it. We need good history teachers at the elementary level, because history, social science is one of the first things that people toss out. I see Peg nodding in agreement. So we would love to have more history taught at the elementary level. So.
And I mentioned in our last session, Peg, when Jim was in, but you weren't in, that I was flipping through my 6-year-old's little social studies book, and I recognized the name there, of course, Margaret Hill. So that's just a little insight in terms of the sort of brain trust that we have here, the wealth of experience. So some other notes in the chat, if anybody wants to amplify any of those notes or raise hands to cover any of those notes. But I like that we started, we got some fundamentals about EdJoin in there in terms of kicking off this process from the student's perspective. And Jim, following up on that discussion just now, Jim noted again, as Colton had highlighted with that article, that some of these requirements have indeed been waived for subs, and check the legislation, the specific requirements. So questions about whether these are permanent waivers or temporary, I think, is a little bit up in the air. I assume they're temporary for now. But this may be, I mean, a lot of people have talked about the pandemic as a sort of acceleration of inevitable trends, whether it's virtual learning or roboticization, all kinds of different things like that. And I was joking with Don in a few exchanges about smashing big test, and that sort of this as an opportunity for those who are advocating to dismantle or just to break with a sledgehammer a lot of the sort of testing requirements that are often not accessible in a sufficient way and have no shortage of problems in terms of equity and lots of other issues. So hopefully we can take this opportunity to take out the sledgehammers and go after big test as well. But that's a philosophical perspective, and I'm moving away from the agenda at hand. And so to bring things back, please, who wants to hop in? And Christine, now that we know that you're also very much in the thick of this world, and anybody else I didn't call out, please do hop in and raise hands or just go ahead and unmute until it as I think Jonathan said, or Michael said, until it sort of devolves, until the wheels come off. Let's just go ahead and jump in and continue to share with our students what you wish you'd known or what you think they would benefit from knowing.
I can jump in again on a few other things, and some other people brought these up. Jim brought up, the importance of like having lunch with other faculty members, getting to know, and I think as well, Jonathan mentioned, neighboring teachers. You can certainly have moments where maybe your classroom gets so loud, neighboring teachers kind of come in and check in and help get things, shored up again, which happened to me. I'm more than once, many times, especially early on. But especially if you get in with subbing, and one of the things I guess to start off with, I wish I would have known, is subbing is hard. Teaching is a hard job, right? I mean, this is why we're seeing in the news about the turnover, the lack of subs. All of this is don't kid yourself going into this. It's a tough job, but sticking with it is really important. So especially when you first start out, things can be really overwhelming, but I'd encourage all of you, if you're interested in it, to write it out for a while, because you get better at it and you'll start to enjoy it more the longer that you do it. So that's something I definitely recommend. But then once you start to especially sub at a school site regularly, like there was a couple different high schools that I started to sub at all the time. I kind of joke, in fact, that one of the high schools that like I used to work there, because I subbed there 3 or 4 times a week. And it's because some of the teachers, after I had subbed for them, started to request me to be their sub, right? So once you get to like that level, it gets to be a really good gig. And in fact, the students at the school started to get to know me, right? Just like walking around at lunch, kids is like wave and say hi. So it helps in that way to have the familiarity of the campus. It can help you get kind of more permanent work, especially in a place that you like. I mean, one of the classes or teachers that I ended up getting called back for was a AP US economics and government teacher. So I got to sub for the stuff that I love, and it worked out great. But that came through getting to know the other faculty by having lunch with them. Also to, the folks working admin, people at the front desk. These are people that truly run schools. And them getting to know you and like you is also huge in terms of you getting called back and working at places. So, those were things that, especially if you're looking long-term, can really help. And then in terms of teaching practice too, like as a general rule of thumb, kind of what Don and I said earlier, and others, the elementary school levels where you're going to get these more detailed lesson plans, and then if you've got juniors, you're going to put on a movie. which is like if you're just kind of going into a classroom blind. But for these teachers that got to know me, who I subbed for a long period of time, they started giving me more responsibilities and actually giving me lesson plans that they wanted carried out in their absence. So it was, again, that kind of long haul, sticking with it, getting to know folks. They also will allow you and trust you with more responsibility and know that you're capable of doing those things. And you can get a lot more of that hands-on teaching experience, which is great.
Don, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize all the time. So if somebody else wants to speak, please, by all means, just interrupt me. I definitely want to hammer home what Michael said about the idea of the longer you're at a school site, the more people get to know you and the more they trust you. I never let a sub do anything unless I knew that sub. But, you know, I was in like my 8th year teaching and I took 5 days off to go on a trip because of a honeymoon or something like that. I can't remember, but when I was gone, I knew who my sub was, and I literally had them doing the DBQ with my students. They walked through the process the entire time because I trusted them to be able to do that. And I know who I was getting, and we had talked about it ahead of time, fielded questions and stuff like that. I put some notes in the chat about how to make yourself known. You know, typically districts give you like a little sub number, and then you can leave that number behind so that they can request the number when they do their work. Because typically you get a phone call or an email, or I think it's still just a phone call, like an automated phone call, and you push 1 to accept the job or 2 to reject it or whatever it is. And if they typically, you as a teacher, when you go in to put in a sub, you can do it electronically. You go into whatever the district uses for that, and then you can request a sub by either their number or in some instances by name. It depends on the system they're using and how antiquated it is and what they've made available to the viewers. The other thing I wanted to kind of say is, you got to remember that you're going to be in that classroom for 1 day. And some of those kids are going to see you for 1 hour. So I would make sure that you recognize that, like, is this the hill you want to die on? Because every kid is going to need to go to the bathroom. And maybe one of them will actually have to go. Nobody cares that that kid goes to the bathroom and is gone for 5 minutes. You in your teaching career may care that everybody wants to go to the bathroom, but you don't want to be the guy to be like, no bathroom passes, and then have a kid, because they can and they want to prove a point, use the restroom in any kind of capacity inside your classroom. I have heard stories. I haven't actually had to deal with that because I'm like, I don't care if you need to go or don't need to go. Just come back so the next kid can go. And then the other thing is like, as a substitute teacher, you don't want to be calling down to the discipline office unless you have to. And have to is a big thing there. My whole thing was like, if they're not bleeding and there's nothing on fire, you've had a good day. That's kind of like the expectation. But at the same time, you've got to manage what comes out of that classroom and the hearing of the teachers, because they'll go down and they'll complain to the secretary who does run the school, make no doubt about that. That's 100% true statement. You want to know who runs the school? It is your secretary and it is your janitors. And I see Andrew's got a question, so.
Excellent. Thank you, Don. Andrew, please hop in.
Yeah, I know I'm not necessarily a subbing history teacher yet, but I could be. But I will say, I remember in my high school days, a specific teacher I had when I was in high school, or a sub, I mean. And I remember he was so well known at the school. Literally, I would see him around campus or whatever. I'd walk around with him and we would talk or whatever, and literally, as I was talking to him, he would literally get a teacher coming up to him and say, hey, so-and-so, are you available tomorrow to sub? I mean, that's how good of a sub he was. He was respected by the students and by the teachers. So that must mean he must have been a pretty good sub. And he was, I just wanted to mention that I think it's a good balance if you can do both. And that's how he was well respected. He would get literally jobs as he was talking to other students, and they would say, "Oh, so-and-so, are you available tomorrow?" And he'd say, "Yeah, I am. I'll be at," "Yeah, that sounds good," or whatever. And he would literally get jobs on the spot.
Thanks, Andrew. And Andrew, as you see from your Zoom handle, is in also representing the History Club.
Yeah,
sorry,
give a quick,
I didn't plug before we.
If it was the right time to plug it. If you want me to, I can.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Andrew Hunter, as you can tell in my Zoom handle, and I am the president at the Palm Desert branch of our History Club and Pi Alpha Theta, or not the Pi Alpha Theta, I guess directly, but I am president of the History Club, which is associated with Pi Alpha Theta. So yeah, if any students are interested, we have 2 branches, one at the main campus at CSUSB and one at Palm Desert, and I'm the president. And actually, Dr. Karp is the advisor at the PDC campus. We have meetings every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, and we have meetings at the main campus, I believe, from 5 to 6 every other Monday. So if you are interested, feel free to reach out to me or talk to Dr. Karp, or I'm sure Dr. Murray would know, or just let me know. So we would love to have any students that are interested, or even any faculty or anything that wants to do something with the club or partner with us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andrew, and for plugging the club. And Professor Karp is one of the advisors, and Professor Robinson, Mark Robinson, also is advising the club. So if anybody in here wants the inside scoop on activities like this, also the History Journal and lots more, then do check out the History Club. You can send me an email, send Andrew an email, Professor Karp or Professor Robinson, and find out more. And some more activity in the chat. I have also been posting a couple things from Hannah Knight's extensive notes that she sent to me. She's an active Rialto teacher who has a lot of sub experience. Santiago, please go ahead and jump into the conversation. You're muted, Santiago. Santiago, I think you're muted.
Oh, there you go. Sorry about that. Again, like Andrew said, I'm not a substitute teacher. I'm still third year. But my brother is a teacher, and with regards to the substitute numbers, he's told me that the more they get to know a sub, the more the more work that they give them, but also the more time they have, because now they have their personal number or whatever, and it's not like that morning that they get called. They get called 2 or 3 days in advance, and they already know what to expect. They could actually schedule it out. So that's also something to kind of think about when making friends and administration and other teachers.
That's an excellent point, Santiago, and elaborating on some things that have been brought up. That's a really, and just being your resourceful self. Hannah also noted that in a comment that I didn't share, but that Michael and Don and Jim have noted that networking is so important. Showing your face, getting to know people, and putting your best foot forward. I shared a note in the chat that Hannah included there, so the sort of dress for the job that you want. Definitely present yourself in as extremely professional a mode as possible. And I think that's sort of not to be understated. Things can be going very, you can have lots of challenges and be frazzled and have a lot of really difficult things, a lot of plates spinning, but you can still present yourself in a really professional way, because you'll get a handle on those spinning plates in the next, day or two or whatever. And if you've presented yourself in a very professional way in the meantime, once you get all those plates, neatly placed somewhere, you want to have more work. And in order to do that, you need to continue to present yourself in an extremely professional way. That goes with of course, for your professional presentation, but also the documents that go ahead of you on EdJoin and everywhere else. So we didn't do, this is a possible idea for a future one of these information sessions, specifically on CVs and resumes. And maybe we can have another session on that, because they're not quite self-explanatory. They do take some doing. Jim said, present yourself when you apply to HR, find out what you need to have in the district to be hired as a sub. And Andrew said, thanks, Andrew, for providing your email address. Don, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, One other thing, I would just be incredibly mindful of the size of the school that you're going to. If you're going to a high school, I'd try to anticipate an extra half an hour to get in there. And then also at the elementary, maybe a little bit less time is what my experience has been, but at least a half an hour for the first time you will go to any of the school sites you're going to. And I would also make sure that you just be aware that like your school is either going to be amazingly good at getting people into and out of it or horrifically bad at it. There is no in between. So you'll just really learn very quickly of whether somebody was planning involved, whether there was any planning at all that went into the parking lot design and flow structure. But with keeping the size of the school in mind, at a high school where there's 3,000 kids and 150 teachers and 20 different substitutes, you are a tiny cog in the machine. And so you will get lost along the way. And that is both a good and a bad thing, because if you ask a lot of questions up front, you're causing problems because she's got 50 subs behind you she's got to deal with. But at the same time, if you don't say anything and you run into a problem, it could be, there could be some issues. So I maybe get your assignment, get where you're going, and then talk to those teachers next door to you. So that way you can mitigate any kind of issues that you would have up front. But I would say the curtness or rudeness is definitely something I was almost taken aback by as someone who hadn't been a substitute teacher, right? So I was like, wow, if this is how we're treating the people that are coming into our schools, it's not cool. Also something to remember when you become an actual classroom teacher. I definitely think I would have been a lot more, not that I was rude to subs ever, but I certainly never went out of my way to be like, hey, how's it going? How's your day going? Or anything like that. You know, I had my 180 kids to deal with. I wasn't trying to make new friends. And I regret that now that I have been on the flip side of things.
That's really useful. And just to amplify what Santiago said also about getting your name in there, not just getting your name in, but getting your name in someone who's reliable, amiable, collegial, easy to get along with, et cetera, you get the inside scoop. I love that idea. And that sounds great that you get a little bit of notice so that the process can be a little streamlined. And if you know the ins and outs, the way that Don mentioned, how to navigate that when you need to, that'll come from experience and handling yourself in a way that's really professional. Chris has a hand, and if anyone wants to jump in, please go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I may be overthinking this question, but while listening to what you said, when you get your assignment, will it always be like the front office, or do you just walk into the classroom? Because I know how a lot of high schools, like for example, I went to Grand Terrace High School. They had the front office in the front, but you hardly ever saw anyone go there. You would just see most of the teachers and staff just walking through the same way that the students walked in. So I just wanted to know where would you go for the assignments, or was it just emailed?
So me personally, I've been all over Riverside County. And so I walk in, I look for the main office. I'm like, hey, I'm here to sub. And then they'll direct me to wherever it is that they have to go. And every school site that I have been to has been different. And I mean, wildly different. So yeah.
Yeah. And same thing for me. I was a sub in Riverside County in a few different districts. And I would just add to what Don was saying as well, like arrive early, arrive early, arrive early. Like one of the things that threw me for a major loop is lots of schools, and I don't know if they still do this because I was subbing a number of years ago now, but like you have certain little timesheets you have to fill out at the, and give them to whoever at the end of the day. And most of the schools that I had had like the administrative assistants had already fill out most of it. So I had to do is show up and sign it. And this one school I showed up at, and I was kind of running late that day, and I got there and they handed it to me blank. And it was like, I had to fill it out before I could go to my classroom. And I became the wrench in the whole system because I was the new guy. I didn't know I had to fill it out. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know the school. It was a high school with 4,000 students at it, so it was huge, and it just made for like a very hectic day. So yeah, that arrive early, definitely second that for sure. I appreciate that. Thank you.
We are at the top of the hour. I want to sort of glide into a finish rather than just chop things off here. because I'm sure if there are any sort of parting thoughts from our panel, I want to leave time for an extra 5 or 10 if needed. But this is the first in a conversation on this topic, and I think we covered not only the mechanics and logistics, but a lot of the softer side of things, the soft skills. And I'm just so grateful. Michelle and Colton had to drop off. This is Michelle's class, and Colton is in Michelle's class, so they had to drop off. If anybody needs to run, I also want to thank Alexander Serrano for joining us. He's a second-year student in the MA program. And Alexander, I've forgotten that you also have extensive teaching as a substitute teacher. And I saw you jumped into the chat. So if anybody, if you'd like to jump in, Alexander, with any comments, and not to put you on the spot, or anybody else with any parting thoughts, and I will send around some of this wisdom in a follow-up email to the department and in the description section of the YouTube video that I'll also share with our panelists so that they can share it more widely in case this is helpful. But this is, I've really learned a lot. And so if anybody wants to raise hands, jump into the chat, unmute, please, for some wrap-up thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, take the opportunity to sub a variety of different grades. As I've been subbing, I've been realizing that there's a very different dynamic between each age groups and each grades. And having an understanding of the different grades might be useful when applying and becoming a full-time teacher. Understanding, oh, I found out I liked 4th grade. I found out that I liked 8th grade history. I think by checking out the different grades, it brings some understanding, some experience to what a person would like to do later on.
That's good advice, Phoenix. And thanks for the comments from Maromi and Christine and Jim. These are always a lot of fun. I think I'm always having the most fun here because I'm just learning from everybody. Alexander, your hand is up. Please hop in.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. Yeah, I just wanted to repeat a couple ideas that were already thrown around. Being aware of your location is very important. I personally always arrive anywhere I'm going very early because I don't want to spend the extra 10 minutes finding either parking or finding the right place to go, trying to find the office. I personally enjoy doing that. And what ended up happening for me in my case is by taking that small initiative, I was able to meet a couple administrators just by showing up. And of course, obviously you want to dress for the job you want, right? You don't come in with like a Metallica t-shirt on your first day on the job. So I think that's really important. And then obviously, I think if you use the resources that are available for you and just put your name out there and just networking, that's a really important thing. And also do experiment with grade levels. I just finished in January, I did a 2-week straight doing high school. And I thought this is going to be perfect and fantastic. And then on my very last day, they needed me for a different classroom to sit in for the last 2 periods. And I guess in my last class was the challenge. I had a student in there that would play adult video content out loud and started flipping over chairs and desks. And so that was a pretty much a chaotic situation that I was in. And so that pretty much for me was like, yeah, I'm not doing high school anymore. So it's a learning experience. And so I do recommend that you experiment and see what you like or don't like.
Thanks, Alexander and Phoenix. No, definitely dispatches from the front lines, definitely in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly. That we've got sort of mixed in here. I do want to impose briefly, and I see a lot of folks have logged off, on a question I had and I forgot to ask earlier, and that is short-term and long-term subs. I know my brother did a parental leave, maternity leave sub back in New York, and he could parlay that into a much longer-term thing because he was in for something like 3 or 4 months. any words on that? And is that just a question along the lines of what Santiago noted in terms of showing up, do your best, show your face, make yourself indispensable, and then you're going to be the person they say, hey, can you be our long-term sub? Or is there a separate channel that students should be aware of and get on to, for example, broadcast your availability to do a long-term substitute situation? In Phoenix, I think you are in currently a long-term sub situation. So if you want to jump in, and also Don and anyone else, and thanks guys for staying a few minutes over.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the type of certificate or a permit that a substitute has. There are a variety of different permits that a sub can get. I have an emergency 30-day substitute teaching permit, which allows me to teach for consecutive 30 days in a class. And then I have to take, I think it's just a day break. I just can't work for a day and then I can go back to teaching again. But I have a residency, so I just go to the same school every day. So that's slightly different than a long-term position from what I understand. So, but there are ways to get long-term teaching permits. They're just different requirements, different forms to fill out, things like that. But going to the same school, subbing at the same school, the folks at the school, they start to recognize you. And then that helps kind of getting those long-term positions.
Thanks. And Alexander, are you also, thank you, Phoenix. Are you also in a long-term sub position right now?
So I actually don't know, because I'm a resident at a elementary school, but I also am allowed to take day-to-day positions if I wanted to. So for mine, I'm fortunate in my position where I have a web portal. And so I can see everything in the district, all the positions that are available. And pretty much as Phoenix noted, I also hold the 30-day credential that you can do. So, and I believe that is correct. Where you would just need 1 day in between to reset that, I'm pretty sure. And so what I just finished was a 2-week stint essentially. And so if I had gone up into the 30 days, I would have just had to go somewhere else for a day, and then it probably would have reactivated more than likely. So for me, you can see it, at least for me on my end, you can see it on the portal, how long your job posting will be, because some of them are day by day. Some of them say we need you for 3 days. Some say we need you for a full month. So on my end, it actually does vary. You just want to keep an eye out on the posting.
I'd like to add a comment if I could. Yo, Jeremy.
Thanks. Absolutely, Jim.
From an administrative point of view, a real long-term sub, we're talking several months. You are going to become basically an active teacher, organizing the whole teaching curriculum and lesson plans and whatever, following the state law and the district law and so on. Districts generally are going to be much more careful who they book for those kinds of assignments because it is long-term. So they're going to generally tend to look at people that they know, who have been subbing in the district, who they know and have come to know with those relationships and such. So generally speaking, the long-term assignment is really full-time work. And they're at least, for that time period. And so usually short-term people have to get known and later advertise their availability to do that if they have the time and inclination to do so. But it's not usually something that a district will pick up as quickly and as easily as a day-to-day or short-term person.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. And Don, were you going to jump in on that?
Yeah, it's super easy to get picked up day to day. It's you basically got to be in the know or well liked and respected by either the office staff or one of the administrators or by the actual requesting teacher. It cuts both ways because it's long-term work. It's probably going to be the closest you'll come to being an actual teacher, without having your own classroom. You're walking in and you're having to marry and mirror what the routines and classroom procedures were of that outgoing teacher, as well as molding it into what you are going to be having and dealing with for the next 30, 60, or 90 days or whatever that happens to be. And so I know that the requirements changed, and I don't know if they changed back, but I do know that they used to just put a long-term sub in and they would be there for time immemorial. Then they said no, because that was against the law. And then they made it so that you couldn't do that. And you had to take you had to take a different gig before you could go back to that room. And then the shortness of, or length of that gig has since changed. And I think it's fluctuated, but I'm not entirely sure. But the backside of that is, you know, you're taking work home with you, you're doing that grading, you're doing that lesson planning. So you are doing full-time work for part-time pay when you do that long-term subbing gig. But if you want to know what real teaching's like, that will probably give you the best avenue to really lens that.
That's excellent. Thank you, Jim and Don, Alexander Phoenix, Jonathan, Peg, Michael, and thanks, Christina, for sitting in, and for our students. I've learned a lot. I don't want to impose on our guests any longer, though again, that is my specialty, is imposing on my wonderful friends to share their time with our students. And if anybody has any parting thoughts, I'll give just a moment to hop in. I want to really thank everybody for joining. I'll share some of these materials with the video, some of these links. This has been so helpful for me, and I know from the comments already for a lot of students who logged in here. Thank you, Michael. Thank you to this wonderful group. It's always a highlight to get the band back together. Always great to see the Hills, and thanks, Jonathan, for joining us, and Don, it's terrific to meet you. I really enjoyed this session. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Just a good luck to everybody. Really, really great and very useful information. So I appreciate it, and I know our students do as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. You'll hear from me again. I'll get the band back together. We'll do another future history teachers information session and lots more of that kind of thing. So thanks, everybody. Take care and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's good job.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. You have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Peg, and thanks, Andrew.